section here where there's a part of the annual meeting that is public. And so we want to make sure that in this section of the annual meeting, we're really digging into a set of topics that are germane to the school, that we're hearing from the experts who do the work, that we get the proper guidance to continue to evolve the work that we do here at FC Tech. We have got a great panel with us tonight, and I'm fortunate because I kind of get to talk to my friends tonight. These are folks that I've relied on in a variety of capacities to do the work that I do in Boston and beyond, and these are folks that honestly I'm just a fan of. Like I follow what they do and try to follow it closely and partner when we can. We've got the opportunity tonight really to dig in and talk about early college, which is growing in the Commonwealth, which FC Tech has been pursuing now for a very long time through ASAP, which you heard about earlier tonight, but I would say has been a part of a growing movement in the Commonwealth and in Boston, really to build a bridge between high school and post-secondary education. Rhetorically, we always talk about the career, the birth to career pipeline, but it may be more rhetorical than actual sometimes. I'm not sure that we've always created the connective tissue between the market / system / Frankenstein thing that is early education to the more formal systems of K-12 to the marketplace that is post-secondary education. But early college is actually one of the really recent innovations that has helped us to better connect the learning experience and some of the machinations of the systems between K-12 and post-secondary, and we're seeing a lot of promise and have now for at least a decade, going on 15 years. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, where FC Tech is involved there. I quickly want to introduce the panelists here. We've got Darlene Marcano, who is the head of school at the Dearborn STEM Academy. And as you know, Dearborn is a very close partner and an early college partner of FC Tech. Marjorie Ringrose, who is the Director of Education at the Smith Family Foundation. Marjorie and I now have lived many lives together, so this will be good. And last but not least, we've got Secretary Patrick Tutwiler, who is the Education Secretary for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Secretary, let's start with you. I want to start globally and do some context setting for you to talk about some of the primary priorities for you and the governor in education, and maybe more precisely in post-secondary education.
Mm-hmm. Right, so first let me start by extending my thanks for having me here this evening, the opportunity to sit alongside Darlene and Marjorie, and then to be back on campus at FC Tech. Had an opportunity about a year ago to spend a morning with Dr. Francis, visit some classes, and still remain deeply energized and inspired by what I saw during that visit, and it's great to be back. So just in terms of priorities for this administration, the governor has been very clear that affordability, competitiveness, and equity are the pillars of the administration, and there's applicability really in every sector and in every space. When we think about education, you mentioned birth through college. That is actually in my purview as secretary. We want to think about equity of access in the early education space. We want to think about the core concept of equity in K-12, and then equity and access in higher ed in terms of reducing or eliminating financial barriers, creating stronger opportunities for persistence. And so when we think about what we're talking about tonight, this sort of early college, this touches all of that: affordability, competitiveness, and equity. It is a program, a strategy, a system that is very near and dear to my heart, about going back to my high school days where I was an early college student. But more recently, as a superintendent in Lynn, I've seen the power of this programming. I've seen the success, the outcomes of it. And this is a big piece of the governor's priority in the education space. We could talk more about it, but I can lay out explicitly the dollars that are going in that direction and sort of our thinking about the path forward.
Okay. Let's talk about the movement that has built over some time. And I think where we'll culminate is in you talking about what we've invested now, what the scale is. But Marjorie, I want to turn to you because you've been at this a long time. And I can remember maybe 10 years ago, you and I looking at Charlestown and you and I looking at a few things where there were some ones of one and some interesting things going on, but not a lot of momentum building. We were trying to figure out what are the defining characteristics of this thing and how do we grow it. Tell me about what the path has been in movement building and what was the tipping point? How did we get past just a handful to now something that is being institutionalized?
Sure. Well, it's been maybe a 7-year journey. I know a little bit longer for Franklin Cummings Tech because you were amongst the early colleges to begin moving back into high school and saying, what would it look like, right, if students who were still in high school could come to our campus, take meaningful college credits, be in a college classroom with regularly matriculated students, learning alongside them and accelerate their degree and lower the costs. So you all have been at it some time, but I think it really kind of picked up about 7 years ago. And there were some very early stage programs. I think they felt a little bit more like dual enrollment. If you're familiar with that concept, that would be a student just kind of picking a course or two to try college. But we looked around the country and realized that, goodness, this has been around a really long time. Right, and in terms of kind of an education initiative, which all of us maybe have had some experience or are in education, they come and go. Early college hasn't, right? So it's been around a long time. So we looked around and said, all right, well, if this is working in many, many other states, is it something we can do here? So the state came in and built a designation, put some funding around it. Philanthropy came to the table. Super excited that the foundation that I represent felt deeply that this is something that would be great for young people, for communities, for the Commonwealth, and they put a significant amount of money behind this as well. And maybe some stats, 7 years ago, I think there were 0 official early colleges, right? There was work in the space. There was ASAP, there was some dual enrollment, but in terms of programs that were designated and receiving state funding, 0. If you fast forward today, including a new round of designations, which are approvals that these programs meet certain specifications, there are 55.
Yes.
7 years, 0 to 55. Almost every public higher ed institution is involved. We have lots of private institutions involved. This is in almost every gateway city, coming on 9,000 students. And the thing I think that maybe is one of the tipping points is kind of realizing that this works in Massachusetts. So in Massachusetts, forgive me if I'm misstating, but sometimes we like to think that things that work elsewhere might not happen here for various reasons. Well, guess what? It does. And evaluation here showing that early college is producing gains in the 16, 17 percentage point difference for immediate matriculation and second year persistence. So this is working for young people in Massachusetts. And I think that kind of realization and that ability to prove that this is working and it's working for everyone, it begins to tell a story that people listen to. And our legislature and our governor, thank goodness for the support, enthusiastic support for this, can look at this and say, this actually does what it professes to do. So I think that's one of the tipping points.
Indeed, and I'm glad that Marjorie underscored the culture shift that took place as well. Because if you know Massachusetts and Boston, we don't trust solutions from outside, but we don't trust anything that was created here. So it's a paradox. And it's often a win for the status quo. But we broke through on this one. And so there's something to be studied about that, but we've got to ride this momentum. Darlene, Dearborn plays a really important role in the local movement here, because there was a point, I might not get the year absolutely correct, I want to say somewhere around 2014, 2015 in there, where when you open your new building, the Dearborn established itself as the Dearborn Early College and STEM Academy. You put early college in the name and you said you wanted to be a flagship for the movement. Tell us about that and how you recreated the Dearborn on its trajectory from being a middle school to becoming a 612.
So thank you for that question. Very interesting. I actually was not at the school when it first opened in its location right now as a 6 through 12 early college campus. However, the year after I came, 2019, we did start that movement. And what's interesting about it is it does take the amount of time that it took in order to build up what we currently have. And just so that you know, we currently have almost 50% of our 10th through 12th graders taking early college courses. And that for us, that took a lot of hard work. But what we're seeing is that we're growing the programs. And we're not growing it ourselves, which I find to be very interesting. We're not the ones going out to students saying, hey, we need you to do early college. What we've done is offered opportunities to all students. Our school is 50% either current or former multilingual learners. We're also 35% students who have IEPs. The most important thing for us is offering opportunities for all students. I sat in that room with those students before coming in here with you all, and they grilled me about our school, about the work that we're doing. They told me about themselves. But what I heard primarily is that opportunities need to happen for all students. And we wanted to make sure to do that. That was essentially the foundation of what's happening at our school. It's not easy. There are a lot of other competing interests. There are other partners that want to come into the school. But I consider myself and my administrative staff to be gatekeepers. So it's up to us to make sure that whatever partnerships we have, that they match up. And we've actually found that with, I'm gonna remember the name. I wanna say BFIT too because I am very old school, Franklin Cummings Tech, because we've deepened our partnership with the school. We've worked with Wentworth, we also work with RCC, but for us it wasn't about broadening or lengthening our partnerships. It's about deepening the partnerships that we currently have and making sure that we're all on the same page. And that's opportunities for all students. So we're a work in progress. There's nothing perfect in any organization, certainly not perfect in any school, but our values align. And for us, our values are offering multiple opportunities for students. So work in progress, but
wonderful.
We're building it.
I want you to say a little bit more about what's different about walking into the Dearborn versus walking into a gen ed comprehensive in Boston.
Sure, I think honestly what it is opportunity. So when I first came to the Dearborn, there was this, I don't know how to describe this tension between offering upper level classes and what that should look like. And so there was, people who thought AP was the way to go, early college. We also had dual enrollment. We had, folks coming into the school talking to students about trades. Why not offer all of these things? And so I think what's different is that there's a place for all students. Those opportunities aren't created because we think they're the thing to do. It's based on student needs. And if a student says to me, you know what, I think I want to be an electrician. I'm not sure that I want to go to college. I want to try it out. Then it becomes our job to figure out how we get that child exposure to what they want. And that's what we're doing. And so I think that's the difference.
Wonderful. So Pat, the movement builds. Marjorie talked about now we've got 55 early colleges. Help us explain or understand what that means from a state investment standpoint.
Yep.
How much do we have in right now? What's the frontier?
What's the frontier? There is no sort of ceiling, in my view, and I realize that's dangerous saying that as a state official when we're talking about finance, but this is being recorded, is it not? Okay.
It is.
So what that means is, and I just want to go back to what Marjorie said, 55 designated programs, you've got about 61 high schools involved, 9,000 students. This started in earnest back in 2017. You had about 800 students in that first year in designated programs. 800 to 9,000 in 6 years. It's like a 900% increase. It's significant. But all the needs are not being met. Marjorie mentioned that we're in most of the gateway communities, 76% of them to be exact. That's great. We're not all the way there. There are students in rural communities who are economically disadvantaged who would benefit incredibly from this experience. So I think we've got a long way to go. I am thrilled that we had the conversation just a few hours ago in a joint meeting between the Board of Elementary and Secondary Ed and the Board of Higher Ed about what do we want to see happen in the next 4, 5, 6 years? What do we want to see happen by 2030? And that language is really around doubling down. How do we double, triple the number of students involved in this program? Really excited in the governor's first year. She articulated very clearly that this is something that works. We talk about the outcomes at some point in this conversation, but we want to invest in these programs. $47 million in her first year. That's a $13 million increase over the previous fiscal year. Sustain that investment for FY25. And now we want to be really thoughtful and strategic around what are the next steps, what are the finances needed to include it. But I want to be clear though, when we talk about doubling and tripling the numbers of students engaged, we want to be careful about safeguarding quality at the same time. This is not just throwing the doors open and saying everybody who wants to do this, come on in. There's a really thoughtful designation process that makes sure that the high school and colleges are being thoughtful about supports, being thoughtful about communication with families, are thoughtful about course sequencing, all the necessary ingredients that we've seen work really, really well for students thus far. And so I think all the writing is on the wall for a really sincere commitment to seeing this expand significantly in the coming years.
So you said we'd get to the results. Let's get to the results, because I don't think that we would be building on something that wasn't working.
That's right.
So help us understand how powerful this has been so far.
Really powerful. Marjorie alluded to it earlier. We're seeing students who are engaged in early college programming matriculate to 2- and 4-year schools at a rate of about almost 80%, 76%, compared to 55% of their counterparts. We're also seeing really strong evidence about not just the fact that they're matriculating, they're persisting, which is the golden goose. We don't just want to get them there, we want to get them through to degree completion, that industry recognized certificate. And we're seeing really strong evidence of the persistence rates as well. It works, and obviously they graduate from high school at really high rates as well. So it is a powerful, powerful program. The student feedback, really important factor as well, is really, really positive. And Lynn, we're really consistent and sort of dedicated to understanding from students what's working with this program, where do you need support, what do you like about this. Students like the opportunity. They like that they feel like they're being taken seriously with their goals and their dreams. They like the challenge. All the pieces are there that are so incredibly positive, and we're just excited to see it expand.
Wonderful. Darlene, does that resonate with you in terms of the kind of results that you see for Dearborn students?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that students are seeing themselves. They want to go to college, they're seeing themselves as college students. The one thing I do want to just touch on that you said that I think is really important is that schools should and need to provide wraparound services for our students. Because what we're finding through feedback is that some of them may feel lost in college, or they don't feel connected to our school, which was like something that we kept hearing, because we did have several students just take full-time early college courses. And so we had to reflect on their feedback from from FC Tech, feedback from families on what we could do to make the experience better. And so we decided that they needed more tutoring, that we needed to have people in the classrooms who are, for our students to help support them in whatever it is that they needed. There was so much rich information that we knew we needed to act on. And so it was really important for us to hear from them, specifically to provide targeted intervention and support.
Yep. Marjorie, as you've seen this grow, what's emerged to be the secret sauce? What are high schools and colleges learning are the critical elements to success, and what conditions have to be set for scaling?
Yeah. This is a very labor-intensive model. Right? It requires a lot of human resources. I mean, the financial resources are not insignificant, but when you think about the people power, right, that drives this model, it's tremendous. And making sure that we have the funding, that we have the resources, that we have the capacity in both our K-12 and our higher education system to bring those necessary supports to the table. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that your model, your program with the Dearborn is certainly an exemplar in the way that you have built supports around these students, and I've watched you over the years build out this program, there's never a no, right, that comes from Franklin Cummings Tech, or we can't do it, or we don't have the resources to do this. It's always a yes, what do we need to happen? And I think that's kind of one of the conditions that we need sitting in our higher ed institutions and our K-12 institutions, that mindset. I think also it's really, really important to think about kind of how you scaffold this model as students grow and mature and age, and make sure that it's developmentally appropriate and where they are in time. These are high school students, in some cases 15-year-olds, right, taking college classes, and sometimes they're in a college class on a college campus with other regularly matriculated students. And it's important to understand kind of who, what are to Darlene's point, what do your students need, and how do we scaffold these experiences, right? You see a lot of models where the college faculty come to the high school during the 10th grade, and students are all together. All the early college students are together taking their bio class or their Comp 101 class. And then as juniors, maybe they go to the college campus but are cohorted still. So they're in college, they're in classes on the college campus, but they're still with their early college peers. Then by 12th grade, free, right? They're off, they're on the campus. Some of yours are full-time on the college campus while they're in high school, and they have learned how to navigate those systems. So I think getting those scaffolds for young people is very very important. I think the other thing I would say, kind of what, how do we get this to an even further level is relevancy. And this is a place where I think that what you do here at Franklin Cummings Tech and with the Dearborn and with some new emergent models around deeply tying the early college, right, the college course taking, the college degree, the credential that is conferred by a higher ed institution, making sure that that is connected to the life that students want to live, the occupation they want to live after they graduate from high school. And the connection to career, I think, is incredibly, incredibly important in that. And it's what you have built and are building in this program. So I think those are a couple of things as I see the evolution of early college that we've got to be able to figure out how to bring to every program in the Commonwealth.
So I hope you all heard Marjorie say FC Tech is an exemplar. So you just
Absolutely.
you just earned a spot on one of these posters with a quote. So when you come back next year
Absolutely honored.
for the annual meeting,
Be
you will
my
see your face at the front of the room with the quote.
That was not an exaggeration. I mean, I have had the privilege of working with probably half, many schools in Lynn, and this is an exemplar in many ways.
Appreciate that. I've got many questions. We've got limited time. I want to know if you have questions. I can keep going, but if there are questions that you have for the panelists, we want to get to them. Musi.
Understanding that UPS, they are inconsistent in supporting families through that journey of student. Occasional, U12, even transition. How do you all begin to think about supporting families so they can learn to support their students as they go through the journey? The only other thing I'll say is, that's student parents, I want to ask them that. How do their parents and families learn to navigate this with them? In a very Eurocentric perspective of get through high school, you go to college, you should be all right. You're a student versus no. We're all just young. So,
Was that for me?
Anyone who? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes. Just to for the folks who are online watching the webcast, the question that was answered is how do we make sure that we support not only individual students but families through the journey of early college. We don't want to assume that just because you are at the post-secondary door, you're ready to be independent, and we want to teach our systems to be better caretakers of families.
I can start because at the school level, for us, it is very important. I've said this, before, and in many different spaces that we bring families in, because a lot of times students are given options and their families don't know anything about the choices that they're making. And I have an example, but I'm not going to do it. But I will say this, students are making those choices and they're not letting their families know what's happening. And so for us, it's important to, at every step, parents need to be on board. So that might include something small as, okay, we need this signature, we're gonna call home, this is what your child is doing, is this okay? We need you to sign, we need you to come in, and we need you to learn about it. To something bigger where we have at open house, at every open house, at every community meeting, at everything that we have that's open for families, we bring families in, we have either FC Tech will have a table, the school will have a table. We want parents to learn, because if they don't know what's happening, the students are making those choices on their own. And we cannot have them do that. And I would agree with you. I've seen so many times where families are sort of passed over and students are left to their own devices. Or in some cases, which I don't think is fair, the schools make decisions for kids, about kids, without including their own families. And so that definitely has to stop. And that's something that, I've said our schools are work in progress, but again, for us, that's a value. We cannot make decisions for families, for kids, without including them. That's just not fair.
No, thank you for the question. And there are now mics on the table. This is a generation who remembers Phil Donahue, so I'm happy to get up and. Other questions? Rakeem, and take that mic.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I learned a lot already just from you being here. One of the stats you mentioned, and maybe everyone has to answer this, but this is on the back of the stat that you mentioned for the secretary, which is that if you are in an early college program, you're matriculating to college 60 to 70% of the time, relative to the 50% that don't do this. I'm curious to know, what are the long-range metrics, maybe 2 or 3 that you're most proud of, perhaps 5 or 10 years down the road, in addition to this incredible stat that you mentioned?
Are you asking me what I would be most proud of 10 years down the line, or are you asking me what I am most proud of at present moment?
It is perhaps the 2 or 3 long-term metrics that you're most proud of.
The matriculation statistic is really important. I think for me, the golden goose is the persistence piece. The fact that because of these programs, and there are certainly other sort of experiences and supports we could point to that help a student persist in college, but strong tie between participation in this program and not just getting there, but actually succeeding when you're there, that is most meaningful to me. I mean, we really want to see, as I mentioned before, students all the way through this incredibly important process, whether it's to a 2-year program and they graduate and they earn that industry recognized certificate and they're into a career of their choice, or they're gone on to a 4-year program. That for me is deeply important.
I might be able to add just a little bit to that. So the state has invested significant resources in evaluation, right? And taking a longitudinal, kind of long-term view of what this, of how young people are moving through this program. And I think it's quite unusual in education to be putting so many kind of resources and energy into really robustly evaluating this and watching young people as they move through, as they graduate, as they move into jobs. Do we see earnings gains when they get those jobs? So, I think we're just now beginning to graduate early college students from college, right? Because it takes them a while to move through high school and through college, right? But I think that at least from what I've seen, the state has made a real commitment to let's keep eyes on this and make sure that our students persisting, and are they graduating, and are they getting the jobs that they want?
Thank you.
Question here. So we have 20% of our students are early college or dual enrollment students. And so one of the questions I have is from what you all have seen, and I know that North Carolina is a state that we lift up, Texas is a state that we lift up. I think we participated in a site visit to North Carolina to see what they do. Are there limitations on that you all might have seen either here or in other states on the sort of the depth and the breadth of how much early college, a high school could do, how much early college a college can actually bring in? And then are there any other more specific pitfalls that you think the state is looking to guard against? You mentioned one, which is quality, the quality of the credential. Darlene, you mentioned another one, which is not involving families in the choices and decisions, or having some competition between the high school experience of a senior year and the college experience. And we work really hard to make sure that's a seamless experience, and that folks don't have any challenges going to prom and meeting their graduation credentials. But other than those, I'm curious about whether or not there's limitations on kind of size of and titration of programming, and then other pitfalls that we might want to watch out for, that other places might watch out for as the program of early college is proliferating across the state.
I'll start if that's okay. Limitations, and I can't speak to any. I mean, we've been really lifting up programs like New Heights in Brockton, which is a wall-to-wall program. Every student who's at that high school is engaged in early college programming. Lynn English, where I used to be superintendent, we're about 400 of the students who are attending Lynn English are engaged in early college programming. We've been lifting up, sort of expanding the opportunity to students because we want to see it grow. I don't think, at least I'm not at a point where we're at, the conversation is around limiting, but just go back to what you sort of just lifted up again, which is to ensure that we're safeguarding quality at the same time. Let's expand, let's create this opportunity for as many students as possible, but let's make sure that it's the same quality one that EY Parthenon, who we've sort of tasked with doing the deep dive on, is this working? The same kinds of qualities and benefits that they're identifying in this work. Less familiar with North Carolina, familiar with Texas, and I would say there's some very interesting, promising, and expensive things that they're doing to sort of incentivize the expansion of this work. But I think we're in a very unique and positive space in Massachusetts with fair share funding, and so expensive doesn't scare me either at this point in time. Also, something I probably shouldn't say publicly. As a state official.
Zoom in on the secretary, zoom in.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in, Darla?
Yeah, I would say. So I'm not familiar with Texas, but I am familiar with North Carolina. What I would say is that we just need to make sure that we are providing those services that I talked about earlier for our students and just ensuring that we're supporting them in whatever their needs might be. What I've seen, and this isn't a knock against North Carolina, some of the schools we visited were magnet schools, which is fine. Very different from, at least the school that I currently am in. And so a lot of those students were, from what I saw, the best and the brightest, which is great. And everyone was offered the opportunity. But what they did not have was a diverse population. So there were definitely students of color, but there weren't students who were second language learners. And there weren't many students who were on IEPs. And so, as I said before, and I will continue to say this, we need to make sure that we're offering opportunities for all types of students and that we provide supports for those students.
So, Darlene, let me ask you real quickly as a follow-up on that. Kind of in the early days of early college, at least here in Boston, one of the pushbacks was that this is not for every student. It's only for those who are ready. But I think we're learning something different about student readiness through early college. What are we learning about learners and their preparedness to take on rigor?
Well, I think when I hear that, I think that's really a shame, and that's really underestimating what our students can do. I mean, there's so many times that we've had and heard people have low expectations of our students of color, our multilingual learners, our students on IEPs, and so it's not on them to demonstrate that they can do the work. It's on us to demonstrate that we can support them. And so what I'm finding is that the more that we really learn about all of our students, we're able to support them. That is our job. And for me, that is my passion. So that is what we'll continue to do. And I do want to say, though, that, and I didn't mention this before, Laura, who was in here earlier, she works very closely with the team at the Dearborn. She provides a lot of multilingual support for our students. I know, Aisha, that Franklin Tech, you also have supports around students with IEPs and connected our students to those supports so that they're getting it both at the high school and at the college. And so that's the sort of program that we need in order to grow early college and to continue to grow so that there are no pitfalls.
Let's do this. We're running short on time. I saw, so we're going to try an exercise here. We're going to round robin. We're going to get your questions. You can answer whichever ones you want. If we don't get to all of them, come have a little bit of food with us after and talk to folks. But let's start with Chris. Work our way around the table to the 4 questions that I just saw. Just ask your questions and pass the mic.
I think that one thing we experience at Franklin in recruiting is that we get some students who've had relatives here. If an uncle came through, a father came through, they know about Franklin, they come. I'm just wondering, with the kinds of students you have, within their families, if one is doing this program, have you been able to see, it's probably too early, effects on siblings and younger members of the same family?
All right, so we're going to hold that question, but this first question is about, are we seeing effects on college going, desire for college going, a culture and families building around the college aspiration? Let's get this gentleman's question.
I don't necessarily know if I need the mic. Ernest Copley, Associate Head of School. I just came to support my head of schools, but I wanted to also address Dr. Francis's point about limitations. Ms. Marcano has not mentioned that we have several students that are right now in DYS custody. And we have a specific student, I don't know if you were going to address this, that she specifically stressed to this family that this student is and should be ready to take a college course. It was the most enthusiasm, the most energetic, and the most positive response we had from that student since he was in the 9th grade. Ironically, he will not graduate he didn't graduate this past spring, but will graduate next spring. And we are hoping that he takes an early college course this summer and moving forward. So to your point about limitations, I think there are none. I think Secretary, I think the Smith family, I think Ms. Marcano, and all the support that you have given us in this endeavor is just going to build out. So I think we can expose every single student to it. And like we said, you may not get every student to do 5 as our valedictorian graduate with 36 credits, early college credits. We may not get that, but we will definitely get at least 1 or 2 classes for students exposed to college courses so they can then make the decision and move on to working and being a productive citizen in society.
Oh, thank you for that. Peter, let's go to you.
Good.
I'm just going to throw just a question out around classroom instruction. It didn't come up when the student panel was there, but the idea that there is always tension in BPS around standardizing classroom instruction from that K-0-12, and then you have the early college experience in which that instruction looks different, and just what the implications might be for students who have to live in both worlds.
Implications for instructional standardization and influence on family. Peter, let's go.
Great, thanks. And this may just be a really stupid question, and Aisha might have me fired. But but it's sort of coming at it from the outside and looking at what we're doing here of saying, you know, we're blending high school and we're sort of bringing overlapping college with high school. And that sort of feels like an institution-centric sort of approach to it, because that's what we've got. But if we sort of flip it around and say, okay, well, what's the best education package for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old? Are we saying that the way the current system is organized is suboptimal for that age group, and we've created this almost workaround by overlaying college with high school? And the real fix, if we had the opportunity to sort of zoom right out, would be to kind of remake what goes on for 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And is this an interim step, perhaps, in some way, towards a bigger, more systemic change?
I think we captured it. I might sum it up by kind of saying, is this the high school redesign solution? Or is this an incremental step towards high school redesign? So let's hold that.
You want me to? I can do that. I can answer it.
Let's
really
do it right.
fast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, keep it swinging. We're going to get these last couple of questions in.
Well, this may not be necessary given the incredible growth, but have you looked at how do you get further upstream in terms of, I'm assuming that the kids don't know about early college until they get to high school. Is there, that's incorrect?
Not true.
Not true, okay.
I'll answer that one later. Yep,
Excellent.
not true.
Okay. Then my question's moot.
So if we covered all the questions, then we have instructional standardization and the trade-offs, influence on family. Darlene, Marjorie, Pat, we'll just walk it down the line. You can say what you want to say on both or either.
Oh, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit.
You can talk about that too.
So we have a program at our school. It's called the DEC program, Dearborn Early College Kickoff. It starts in 7th grade. This is the second year that we're doing this. And what happens is that we offer classes in the summer. They're accelerated classes in English and in math for these students. They go on to the next grade. So our 7th grade, for example, is going into the 8th grade. This year we did some cohorting where they're still using the curriculum that we're using in BPS, but accelerated, more work, maybe more skill building, things like that. Next year what we're doing is we're offering them electives, because what we found based on reflection is that these students wanted to be with their peers and not cohorted. We also wanted to make sure that we're offering equity too, and that we're not, like, we don't have this one class where everyone's accelerated and no one else can, is in this class. They really felt like they were isolated. So next year what we're doing is we're offering an elective. So the students will all matriculate, with the other 8th graders, but they'll take this one deck elective where they're working on skill building, math and ELA. So we're trying to introduce it that way. They're also going to take a lot of different field trips, have different experiences at Franklin Cummings. They'll have folks coming into the building to work with them, a lot of hands-on work. So we're trying this method out, but we're introducing it to them as early as 7th grade.
What do you want to tackle, Marjorie?
Well, I would put this one up as Franklin Cummings Tech and Dearborn being an exemplar. I feel a little bit like a broken record, but it's true in this. So if you look across the Commonwealth, some early colleges have made it down into those middle school years, especially if you have a 7 to 12 grade configuration. It makes it easier. But I think that is put that on the to-do list, right, as early college matures and grows across the Commonwealth, right? It is challenging asking a 9th grader, do you want to be in early college, when they've never heard about it in 6th, 7th, 8th, even elementary school. So I think that is on the list of things that we need to do across the initiative. I would pick up the sibling question and the family question. So from a kind of pure high quality research perspective, we haven't, I think, done a lot of look at, take a young person and see if their sibling showed up in an early college 5 years later. But I can tell you just anecdotally that the programs, when you talk to the young people who've been in the program and they say, would you recommend this to everyone else? All of them will say, I'm doing this and I'm here talking to you, to legislators, to schools, to panelists, whatever, because I want this for my sister. Mm-hmm. So you hear that, and then I hear a lot of stories of guardians and parents going back to school, right, who may not have gone to college, may not have been able to complete their degrees, but because of what their young people are participating in high school, they've made it back into those systems. And I have to credit our higher ed institutions for welcoming and creating situations where they can go into those. I'm probably out of my time, but can I list a limitation?
Go. I mean, this is his show, but
I love to hear the secretary. There are none. I think one thing that we do need to take a hard look at is kind of the way this model is funded. Which is different than can we fund it at great scale. It's the way and the processes through which this is funded, and the state is embarking right now on a exploration of that, right? And I hope that there will be plenty of opportunity for folks like you to let the state know how this is working for you or how it's not working for you. But I will say that whatever comes out of this work, from a school leader's perspective, from a college president's perspective, you need right-sized, reliable, and predictable funding, right? And we've come a long way thanks to the legislature and to the governor and lieutenant governor, but we are yet to arrive at that point. But I would put that as a, let's tackle that one sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
All right, Pat,
Bring us home.
bring us home.
All right. I want to say that my sort of declaration that there are no limitations was really more reflective of a mindset that I embrace, which is there are no barriers that are gonna, stand in the way of us getting to the promised land, getting to the North Star with this work. But I do appreciate you lifting up that particular challenge, which I am aware of. If I could just go back to. Or just sort of close with, while I'm on the topic of mindset, of what you said earlier in response to the question of, hey, or the worry that there's messaging to certain students and families that this programming, this pathway might not be for you. And then the example that you just shared that was so sort of reflective of a deep mindset around, no, this is for everyone. I just want to be very clear about what my mindset is on this. I've heard frequently over the years in my career as an educator about what programming is right for certain students. I believe deeply, deeply that we are preparing all students for college level work. Whether they decide to do that or not is up to them, but they will be ready when they get to that point to make that decision. And that's why I feel so strongly about early college and the opportunities that it provides. Feel so energized and heartened by the kind of outcomes that we're seeing, because it is that opportunity for students who are historically underrepresented in higher education. This was born as an equity initiative in Massachusetts. In 2017, if you look at where our early college exists right now in Massachusetts, it's largely in communities or in school districts where there's large concentrations of Black, brown, multilingual, economically disadvantaged students. And we're seeing really strong outcomes. We want to expand it. So I just want to be clear about that mindset.
And let me just ask you to comment in the context of your response on the instructional differentiation question that was asked and what's happening from classroom to classroom in an early college classroom versus a comprehensive gen ed classroom, and how we find some balance, I think, to get to the level of quality that you're talking about. But I think there's also differentiation and personalization that we're trying to get to. I'm not sure that the goal is instruct this one way for everybody, but to really figure out what's the customized experience for your learning.
Right. I mean, I think you just answered it.
All right.
Yeah, and it is a complicated question. I would say, having launched early college in Lynn, there were a lot of questions around what instruction looked like for our early college students, and there had to be a lot of, I can't think of a better word, but really, we'll just say discussion, I was going to say negotiation, around what pedagogy looked like in those classrooms. But it did also raise really strong questions around what pedagogy looked like in other classrooms and what is rigor and what do we expect for all of our students. And so it's a complicated question, but one that I think you just answered really well.
All right. I'll take the credit.
Okay.
So please help to thank Darlene, Marjorie, Secretary Pat. You guys were wonderful tonight. Thank you for the generosity of your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
And thank you. We've had another successful annual meeting tonight. More feedback and more dialogue about this. The great thing is that there are a lot of opportunities for us to walk into the Dearborn so we can see this work in action, learn more about it directly. We got Marjorie on speed dial, so we can do that. And I think the secretary became a fast fan of FC Tech when he was here a year ago. So I think we can get him when we need him, if not when we want him. So.
That's right. That's right.
But thank you and hope you enjoy your evening. There's still a few refreshments there as well, but thank you for a great annual meeting.
All right, awesome.
Ooh.